What if I told you that right now, scattered across the globe, there are bodies that should have turned to dust centuries ago, yet they remain as fresh as the day they died? Bodies that defy every law of decomposition we know. Bodies that refuse to rot, to decay, to follow the natural order that governs all living things. In 1909, when they opened the tomb of Saint Bernadette Soubirous in France, witnesses gasped in shock. She had been dead for 30 years, yet her skin was still soft, her features unchanged, as if she had simply fallen into an eternal sleep just moments before. This wasn't an isolated incident. It wasn't a mistake. It was just one of hundreds of cases that challenge everything we think we know about death itself. Some call it divine intervention. Others point to mysterious environmental factors. But the truth behind these incorruptible bodies might be far stranger than either science or faith can explain. Throughout human history, we've accepted one undeniable truth. Death means decay. Within hours, bacteria begin their work. Within days, flesh starts to decompose. Within years, bones are all that remain. It's the circle of life, the natural order that governs every living creature on Earth. But what happens when that order is broken? Across every continent, in tombs both ancient and modern, archaeologists and investigators have made discoveries that shouldn't exist. Bodies preserved so perfectly that they appear to be sleeping rather than dead. Skin that remains elastic to the touch. Hair that still grows. Eyes that seem to follow you across the room. These aren't mummies, artificially preserved through human intervention. These aren't bodies that were embalmed or treated with chemicals. These are people who simply refuse to decay, as if death itself had forgotten to claim them completely. The phenomenon has a name, incorruptibility, and it's far more common than you might think. Scientists have studied these cases for decades, searching for rational explanations. They've examined soil composition, atmospheric conditions, dietary factors, and genetic predispositions. Yet for every mystery they solve, two more emerge to take its place. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of incorruptible bodies isn't their preservation itself. It's the pattern of who they affect. Let's begin with perhaps the most famous case of all, Saint Bernadette Soubirous, the peasant girl who claimed to see visions of the Virgin Mary in Lourdes, France. Bernadette died in 1879 at the age of 35, her body racked by tuberculosis and asthma. She was buried in a simple wooden coffin in the chapel of her convent. By all accounts, she should have decomposed normally, returning to dust like countless others before her. But 30 years later, when church officials opened her tomb as part of the beatification process, they discovered something impossible. Bernadette's body was completely intact. Her skin showed no signs of decay. Her hands were still soft and supple. Even her religious habit appeared fresh and unwrinkled. The attending physician, Dr. Comte, was so shocked that he initially refused to believe what he was seeing. He examined every inch of her body, searching for signs of artificial preservation. He found none. No embalming fluids, no chemical treatments, nothing that could explain her impossible condition. But the story doesn't end there. Bernadette's body has now been examined 4 separate times over the past century. Each examination has confirmed what the first revealed. She remains incorrupt, defying every natural law we understand. Today, visitors to the chapel at Nevers can see Bernadette's body displayed in a glass reliquary. Her face, hands, and feet are covered with a thin layer of wax to protect the skin from light and touch. But beneath that protective covering, she remains as she was the day she died, more than 140 years ago. The Church considers her incorruptibility a sign of her sainthood, proof of divine intervention. But Dr. Comp's original report contained a detail that the Church rarely discusses. When they opened her coffin, they found not just a preserved body, but one that appeared to have continued growing after death. Her hair was longer than when she was buried. Her fingernails had grown, as if some spark of life still flickered within her perfectly preserved form. Bernadette's case might be extraordinary, but it's far from unique. Across the Catholic world, dozens of saints have been found in similar states of preservation. Saint Catherine of Siena, Saint Rita of Cassia, Saint Francis Xavier, the list goes on and on. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. Incorruptibility isn't exclusive to Catholic saints. It's been documented across cultures, religions, and time periods that span thousands of years. In Tibet, Buddhist monks have been discovered in perfect states of preservation decades after their deaths. The most famous case involves Hambo Lama Itigalov, a Buddhist leader who died in 1927. When his body was exhumed in 2002, 75 years after his death, researchers found him sitting in the lotus position, completely intact and showing no signs of decomposition. But unlike the Christian saints, Itigalov's preservation came with specific instructions. Before his death, he told his followers to exhume his body after a certain number of years. When they did, they found him exactly as he had predicted, unchanged by time, sitting in meditation as if he had simply transcended the physical world without truly leaving it behind. The parallels are striking, but so are the differences. While Christian incorruptibles are often discovered by accident during routine examinations, many Buddhist cases seem to involve individuals who actively prepared for their preservation, as if they possessed knowledge of how to cheat death itself. Ancient Egyptian texts speak of similar phenomena, describing individuals who achieved immortality not through mummification, but through spiritual practices that somehow prevented natural decay. The legendary Taoist immortals of China were said to possess bodies that never aged, never sickened, and never decomposed. Suddenly, we're not just talking about isolated miracles. We're looking at a global phenomenon that spans cultures and centuries, suggesting that incorruptibility might be more than just divine intervention or random chance. Dr. Maria Fernandez, a forensic anthropologist who has studied incorruptible bodies for over 2 decades, puts it bluntly. These cases shouldn't exist. According to everything we know about decomposition, these bodies should have returned to dust long ago. So what does science tell us about these impossible preservations? The first thing researchers discovered is that environmental factors alone can't explain incorruptibility. Some of these bodies have been found in conditions that should accelerate decay. Warm, humid climates, soil rich in bacteria, exposure to air and moisture. Yet they remain perfectly preserved, while other bodies in identical conditions decompose normally. Chemical analysis of incorrupt tissues has revealed some fascinating clues. Many show unusual mineral compositions, particularly high levels of calcium and magnesium. Some contain trace amounts of rare earth elements that shouldn't naturally occur in human tissue. But whether these are causes or effects of the preservation remains unclear. Dr. Fernandez's team made another disturbing discovery while studying the body of Blessed Anna Maria Taigi, an Italian mystic who died in 1837. When they examined tissue samples under high-powered microscopes, they found that her cells appeared to be in a state of suspended animation rather than death. The cellular structures were intact, the DNA was undamaged, and most remarkably, the cells showed signs of extremely slow metabolic activity. as if death hadn't truly claimed her, but had simply slowed her life processes to an almost imperceptible crawl. This finding has profound implications. If these bodies aren't truly dead in the conventional sense, what are they? Are we looking at evidence of a state between life and death that we don't yet understand? A form of existence that transcends our current definitions of mortality. Some researchers have proposed even more radical theories. Dr. James Whitmore, a biochemist at Oxford University, suggests that certain individuals might possess genetic mutations that allow their bodies to enter a hibernation-like state that can last for centuries. But the most controversial theory comes from Dr. Elena Vasquez, a quantum physicist who has spent years studying the electromagnetic properties of incorrupt bodies. Her research has detected unusual energy signatures around these preserved remains, patterns that suggest the presence of what she calls bio-quantum fields. According to her hypothesis, consciousness itself might play a role in preservation, creating energetic patterns that somehow stabilize cellular structure and prevent decay. It's a theory that bridges science and spirituality in ways that make many of her colleagues uncomfortable. But not all stories of incorruptible bodies are filled with wonder and reverence. Some carry a darker, more disturbing undertone that challenges our romanticized notions of this phenomenon. Take the case of Father Francisco Lopez, a Spanish priest who died under mysterious circumstances in 1643. When his body was discovered 50 years later, it was perfectly preserved, leading many to believe he had achieved sainthood. But historical records tell a different story. Lopez had been accused of practicing dark rituals, of communing with forces that existed outside the boundaries of conventional religion. Witnesses reported seeing strange lights emanating from his chambers at night, hearing voices speaking in languages that predated human civilization. Some claimed he had made a pact with otherworldly entities, trading his soul for knowledge of immortality. When his preserved body was examined in the 20th century, investigators made a chilling discovery. Hidden beneath his robes were symbols carved into his flesh, markings that matched no known religious tradition, but bore striking similarities to occult practices dating back thousands of years. The church quickly classified Lopez's case and removed his body from public view. Official records state that he was eventually cremated. But local legends claim that his preserved form still exists, hidden in the Vatican's secret archives, along with other cases too disturbing for public knowledge. This pattern appears throughout history. Bodies that refuse to decay, but carry with them evidence of practices and beliefs that challenge our understanding of both life and death. In Salem, Massachusetts, the preserved remains of a woman accused of witchcraft were discovered in 1892, 2 centuries after her execution. Her body showed no signs of decomposition, but the circumstances of her preservation raised uncomfortable questions about the true nature of the forces at work. Even more troubling are the modern cases that never make it into religious or scientific literature. Private investigations have documented instances of individuals who seem to achieve incorruptibility through means that can only be described as sinister. In 1978, the body of a man named Marcus Holloway was discovered in an abandoned warehouse in Detroit. He had been dead for an estimated 6 months, yet his corpse showed no signs of decay. Police investigation revealed that Holloway had been involved with a secretive group that claimed to possess ancient knowledge of death and preservation. Found among his possessions were detailed journals describing rituals and experiments designed to achieve immortality. The final entry, written the day before his death, contained a single chilling line: The price has been paid. The transformation is complete. Holloway's body was quietly cremated after the investigation, but several officers involved in the case reported experiencing nightmares and strange phenomena for months afterward. They described dreams of Holloway speaking to them, claiming that his death was merely a transition to a different form of existence. These cases suggest that incorruptibility might not always be a blessing or a miracle. Sometimes, it might be evidence of something far more disturbing, proof that certain individuals have found ways to cheat death itself, regardless of the cost to their souls or the world around them. The phenomenon of incorruptibility hasn't disappeared with the advance of modern science. In fact, some of the most puzzling cases have emerged in recent decades, occurring under conditions that make traditional explanations even more difficult to accept. In 1994, construction workers in Moscow made a discovery that baffled investigators. While excavating the foundation for a new apartment building, they uncovered the body of a woman buried without a coffin in ordinary soil. Carbon dating revealed that she had died sometime in the early 1800s, yet her body was so well preserved that she appeared to have died within the past few days. What made this case particularly intriguing was the complete lack of any religious or cultural context. The woman wasn't a saint, wasn't associated with any particular spiritual tradition, and showed no evidence of having undergone any form of preservation treatment. She was simply an ordinary person whose body had somehow defied the natural order for nearly 2 centuries. DNA analysis revealed another mystery. The woman's genetic structure contained anomalies that suggested she might not have been entirely human. Certain sequences in her genome matched no known patterns, leading some researchers to speculate about the possibility of hybrid ancestry or genetic manipulation that predated modern science. Similar cases have emerged across the globe. In Japan, construction crews have discovered perfectly preserved bodies dating back to the Edo period. In Brazil, archaeologists have found incorrupt remains in graves that should have been destroyed by the tropical climate centuries ago. Each discovery raises more questions than it answers. Perhaps the most disturbing modern case occurred in 2003 in a small town in Romania. Local authorities received reports of strange phenomena occurring around an old cemetery. Unexplained lights, temperature fluctuations, and electronic equipment malfunctioning near certain graves. When investigators examined the area, they discovered something extraordinary. Of the 847 bodies buried in the cemetery over the past 200 years, 23 showed no signs of decomposition, despite being buried in standard conditions. These weren't religious figures or individuals known for spiritual practices. They were ordinary townspeople, farmers, shopkeepers, teachers. But here's the truly unsettling part. All 23 incorrupt bodies were discovered in graves that formed a precise geometric pattern across the cemetery. When plotted on a map, the preserved bodies outlined a complex symbol that matched ancient texts describing rituals for achieving immortality. Local legends spoke of a mysterious figure who had lived in the town centuries earlier, a scholar who claimed to possess knowledge of life and death that came from sources beyond human understanding. According to these stories, he had promised the townspeople that death would not be the end for those who followed his teachings. The Romanian authorities have classified most details of this investigation, but leaked documents suggest that the preserved bodies showed signs of continued brain activity, detectable through advanced medical equipment. If true, this would mean that these individuals aren't merely well-preserved corpses, but people who exist in some form of suspended animation, conscious but unable to interact with the world around them. The implications are terrifying. Are these people trapped in their own bodies, aware of their condition, but unable to communicate? Or have they transcended normal human existence in ways that we can't begin to comprehend? This theory finds support in studies of meditation masters and spiritual practitioners who demonstrate unusual control over their biological functions. If consciousness can influence heart rate, body temperature, and immune response during life, why couldn't it continue to exert influence after death? Another possibility involves what researchers call morphic resonance, the idea that information can be transmitted across space and time through non-physical means. Under this model, incorrupt bodies might serve as anchors for consciousness that exists in a different dimensional framework, maintaining their physical form as a bridge between worlds. Some investigators have proposed even more exotic explanations. The temporal displacement theory suggests that certain individuals might exist partially outside normal time flow, aging at rates so slow that centuries pass like moments. The interdimensional hypothesis proposes that some people possess the ability to shift their existence into parallel realities where different physical laws apply. But perhaps the most disturbing theory is the parasitic consciousness model. This proposes that some cases of incorruptibility result from the invasion of human bodies by non-human intelligences that use preserved flesh as vehicles for interacting with our world. According to this theory, entities from other dimensions or time periods might be using human corpses as puppets, maintaining their physical integrity while inhabiting them for purposes we can't begin to understand. This would explain why some incorrupt bodies show signs of awareness and why certain cases are associated with disturbing phenomena. While these theories might sound like science fiction, they're being seriously considered by researchers who have exhausted conventional explanations. The evidence suggests that incorruptibility might be a window into aspects of reality that extend far beyond our current scientific paradigms. We began this journey with a simple question: what happens when death's natural order is broken? We've discovered that the answer is far more complex and disturbing than we could have imagined. From the perfectly preserved saints in their glass reliquaries, to the mysterious bodies discovered in construction sites and forgotten cemeteries, incorruptibility challenges everything we think we know about the boundaries between life and death. Are these cases evidence of divine intervention, genetic anomalies, quantum consciousness, or something far stranger and more dangerous than we've yet considered? The truth is, we may never fully understand the forces behind incorruptibility, but one thing is certain: these bodies that refuse to decay serve as reminders that our reality contains mysteries that dwarf our current understanding. Every time archaeologists make a new discovery, every time scientists examine another impossible case, we're forced to confront the possibility that death itself might not be as final as we believe. That somewhere, in dimensions we can't perceive or states of existence we can't imagine, some aspect of these individuals continues. Perhaps that's the most unsettling thought of all. Not that these people have cheated death, but that they've discovered something about the nature of existence that the rest of us aren't ready to understand. The next time you pass a cemetery, the next time you contemplate your own mortality, remember the bodies that refuse to decay. Remember that the line between life and death might not be as clear as we think. And wonder, what secrets about existence itself are these preserved souls still waiting to reveal?